Okay, well, it's 5 o'clock, which means it is time for RedShelf's Connections Top 5 at 5 for today, June 25th, on Teams and Clubs, an Untapped Opportunity for Digital Growth. My name is Steve from RedShelf, and we thank you for being here. Our Top 5 and 5 session is part of RedShelf Connections, which is a collection of programs that we do to help you connect with each other and have an opportunity for professional development and learn from peers and people from outside the industry. We're always very appreciative that you can attend, and hope that you get a lot out of it. And just a few things as reminders as we get started. We are recording this session, and we do invite you to keep your camera on as we go through the session here, and just so you can see each other's faces and get to know each other a little better. But you certainly don't have to do that if you're not comfortable possibly being in the recording. We also invite you to leave your microphone on mute during the main part of the conversation, which is about 20 to 25 minutes. And if you have questions during that time, you can put them into the chat feature, and I will get those into the conversation during the main time, or we will have some time for Q&A afterwards and be able to address those then. Also, during the Q&A time at the end, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand if you have anything that you want to offer live while we're going through that time period. So again, thanks for being here. As I mentioned, we are talking today about an untapped opportunity for digital growth with teams and clubs, and we are welcoming two folks from Wichita State University who are going to share some top recommendations for schools looking to expand digital access by transitioning student organizations. Before we get into that, a little more about Wichita State University. They are a national leader in industry-funded research based in Wichita, with around 16,000 students from every U.S. state and over 100 countries. They are proud of opening pathways to applied learning, applied research, and career opportunities alongside unsurpassed classroom, laboratory, and online education. They offer a wide selection of courses in more than 200 areas of study at the main campus and other locations and online. And relevant to today's discussion is that they are home to 15 NCAA Division I teams, plus a wide range of intramurals, and club sports. And we will be talking about one of those today. And to kick that conversation off, I'm going to welcome our sales manager for the Midwest region, Cody Lopez.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, we thought to start off talking about this topic. We actually have three former student athletes, as you can see the pictures there, talking about a program that's going to benefit or that has benefited student athletes at Wichita State University. So quick background on myself. I'm a regional sales manager at RedShelf. I've been here for about 3 years. I'm in the bottom left there, and I also played football at Central Michigan University. To get into Holly's bio, Holly there, you can see she was actually a member of the Team USA bowling team from 2012 to 2014. Before that, she was on the Shocker bowling team and also a two-time All-American at Wichita State. She graduated from Wichita State with a Bachelor of Science in Math in 2014 and a Master of Education in Sport Management in 2018. Since then, she's been the Marketing, Development, and Operations Coordinator for the Shockers Bowling Program at Wichita from 2014 and 2019. And from 2018, she's been the Women's Head Bowling Coach until now. Moving on to Andi's introduction. She played soccer at Friends University as a goalkeeper. She was the women's assistant soccer coach at Butler Community College, which you can see a great picture down there at the bottom right. She worked in the collegiate bookstore industry while in college and graduated with a Associates of Applied Science from Cowley College, a Bachelor's of Science from Friends University, and a Master's in Healthcare Leadership in 2007. From there, she worked in a background as an EMT and paramedic, and her industry-related experience has been in the bookstore at Friends University and an assistant director at Wichita State from 2012 to 2015, and has been the director from 2015 till now. So we thought it's a great opportunity. We'd include the sports background and also our professional backgrounds to start off this presentation. And going on to kind of give background on the Shocker Bowling team, which will be the highlight of what we're talking about today. Holly, could you give us a little bit of background on how your organization at Wichita State is structured?
Yeah, so the Shocker Bowling program started in 1975, and the women won the very first national title in 1975 and have gone on and won 9 more times. And the men have won 11 for a total of 20, which is the most in the history of college bowling. On top of that, we've also won 9 individual titles. The program obviously produces great athletes. Our alums have gone on to win 65 professional titles after being here at Wichita State. Kind of how the program works, we have a men's and women's team. There's about 12 on each team, and we're considered an independent varsity sport at Wichita State. So we aren't under our athletic department, but we also aren't a club sport managed by students. Our program's run by 3 full-time coaches.
Yeah, and that's awesome. They're not just any bowling team, but a 20-time national champion bowling team. As I mentioned before, Holly being on Team USA is also something very impressive that showed up Andi and myself. But getting into course materials, Holly, before this, you started working with RedShelf. Could you talk about what was your involvement in getting the student athletes their materials and what that looked like?
Yeah, so we offer athletic scholarships, and that covers both tuition fees and course materials. Previously, we would submit their schedules to the university bookstore, and then we would have to go pull all their books, and then they would have to come in on the first day of classes, kind of in the middle of rush, to collect all their materials. So there was time on both my side and on their side. And we needed a different way to help them.
Yeah, and that's from conversations that I've had with some of our partners. They've shared some of the same things. A lot of time being put into this process. And it's something when you're, all those other things you listed as your title and things that you're handling for the bowling team, you don't really think and have the amount of time that course materials would take to get to your athletes. So that's the core of what we're going to focus on today. We're going to get a little bit more details into each of the top 5 tips, and we'll go on more of those benefits that Holly alluded to. But want to set the stage with the first tip to get started is kind of how did this whole thing get started, and what was the goal of it, and the importance of starting really with an end result in mind is how Wichita's went about this. So Andi, if you could kind of give the audience some background on how exactly did this get started.
Sure. About 3.5 years ago, the head bowling coach had approached me, concerned because for the last 2 years he had been over budget in his course materials, scholarships. And so he was really stressed out. He was concerned that he would have to either reduce the scholarship amount for his bowlers, or there were certain materials that he wouldn't be able to provide to them. And at about that time, we had started our relationship with RedShelf, and our account manager was actually on campus visiting. And so we started having some conversations about how can we make this happen, and how can we, stretch their scholarship dollars to make it worth their while so they can outfit all of their scholarship students with an opportunity to get all of their course materials. And so that's kind of where we started with our program that we have with the bowling department. And so we started with just one semester saying, hey guys, let's see what we can do and see how much of a savings. And year over year, the program's been successful at meeting that goal. That's
awesome. And a key point that I think is very valuable for a lot of our university, our campus store partners is in these times and in any times really, it's great to have those relationships and build your value to all departments on campus. That's a common theme that is talked about in a lot of our conversations. So that's great that you saw something somewhere you could help and you established that. Going through getting started, what were the challenges that you anticipated initially?
We knew with this program, in order to make it work, we would have to gather student schedules. So that way we could vet through the adoptions that we had received for those courses and then work with RedShelf to see if those materials were available in their library. And so we all know that sometimes students like to procrastinate. And so a concern that we had was if we didn't have a student that was enrolled, it would create crunches for us and delivering the content and making sure it was available to the student when classes started.
Yeah, it's great whenever you're starting something new to just have an idea to focus on beforehand of what could come up. And I know later we'll get into, and another tip later on, the exact details of improvements and things that were learned. But could you walk us through what that process looks like and how you share that information with RedShelf, and how just talk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, certainly. So through our RedShelf partnership, we have a shared spreadsheet that we use, that we input all of our inclusive access adoptions on, that we utilize. Well, we actually create an additional tab in that shared spreadsheet where we enter all of our Shocker bowlers that are on book scholarships, including their courses that each individual bowler are enrolled in, and then the adopted books for those classes that we've received adoptions for. Once that's entered in, our RedShelf team gets to work and they vet through that list and say, yes, we have the content. And if it includes a courseware, they note that as well. And so basically it's kind of set up as a white page process for the students, kind of like if a student were to go to RedShelf Direct and purchase course materials for their class. And then what happens is, prior to the start of class, the student athletes all receive an email from RedShelf that say, here's your login to access your shelf. And then when they log into the RedShelf portal, they're able to access all of their books from their bookshelf. For the areas in which the books are not available in the RedShelf library, Holly works with us and we ensure that we have those books for those bowlers and then charge them through the bookstore accordingly.
That's awesome. And it talks through a key benefit and the things that go on campus, just giving them the immediate access and an email, making it easy, replacing, even though in the past you'd probably book up, like find the books, it would take time to do that. And then the student athletes would either go, or you'd have to go to the bookstore, or you'd have to transport them to those student athletes. So just having it available in email, I imagine, I know for me in our process that we had when I was in college, that would have made it a lot easier to just access, breaking down a barrier for accessing the materials that you need. So we'll go on to the next tip, which is kind of thinking outside of the box and sharing how this could help in a new, exactly to a real life example for Wichita and their student athletes. So Holly, what were some benefits that your team has seen from switching to digital?
I mean, I think you kind of covered the first one, where just the ease of having their materials on the first day of class, and not freaking out because they have to go to their 8 a.m. class without their book for the first day. Those younger kids really get anxious kind of the first few days of class. And then kind of the biggest benefit we've seen is just with travel. We're a competitive bowling team, so we're taking 6 bowling balls plus a suitcase plus like sleeping stuff for sleeping on the bus and whatever, and then you add on a bag full of textbooks. Now they just have to bring their laptop or an iPad. So they're not bringing extra things with them. And then even on campus, just walking around, they're not lugging around these big, thick textbooks. They can just open them up and use them right on their computers.
Yeah, and I'd imagine they're used to, carrying a lot of heavy things, having to transport the bowling balls, but any area when they're walking around where they don't have that weight on them would be a benefit. Could you talk through how you kind of implemented the digital first, and if you make any exceptions to if student athletes use print?
Yeah, we basically made it kind of mandatory to start. The norm was the digital textbook. If a student feels like they need a printed textbook, they're just handled on like case-by-case basis. I think since we started, we've made 2 or 3 exceptions total. So they don't come around very often. More often it's the freshmen and sophomores who are like, oh, I don't know if I like this. And we usually throw the whole, we'll just try it and we'll see, and then they end up loving it. We've made a few exceptions for various reasons, just if they learn differently or in a specific class where it would be helpful to have a printed textbook. But we went totally digital and made printed textbooks the exception. So there was no like ease into the process. It was 100% digital right away.
Yeah, and I imagine just from that, like you're easing some of that anxiety and worry, and a lot of, I'm sure most of them just make it easier. It's on your phone versus making a trip or anything like that. Would certainly ease some stress and worry that comes with a student athlete's schedule. You have a lot going on, so any decision that can make things easier or make it where you don't have to make a decision is definitely a benefit. So let's go on to the next tip. This was specific. Our conversation today was specifically around bowling and how we benefited that team and organization. But I'll go through to Andi on asking what was a key characteristic that made you think this program would be successful?
Well, first was, kind of the directive on helping out with the cry that we had from the bowling program on how do we stretch their scholarship dollars. But when looking at other areas within our campus that we could implement programs like this, looking for departments or organizations or clubs that already had established scholarship or direct bill methods for course materials in our store, and then creating a way that we can just easily transition over in that process. Already having that in place made it easy. We already had a working relationship with these areas, so it was easy for us to transition.
Yeah, and I think that's a key characteristic, like you mentioned, is having the billing in place already established. And that's a takeaway for any of the campus stores listening. Anywhere, this isn't just for teams or in a specific organization, but anywhere where there's really direct billing already established, and having a process, you can apply this somewhere on your campus where you would know best fit. Have you identified any other organizations on campus that this could apply to?
Absolutely. One of the areas that we've really been taking a hard look at is how do we, as the bookstore who often provides book scholarships through different initiatives such as admissions events and recruiting and those types of things, how do we stretch our dollars based upon budget constraints and things because of COVID or other situations? So actually this year we'll be implementing, instead of giving our students like a certificate that says you get X amount of dollars in a scholarship for your course materials, we're actually just going to ask those students to provide us with their course schedule, and we'll establish it similar to how we do with our bowling program, and creating a way where we can send them and set them up with a white page link to go in and get a shelf of course materials. We're thinking that this will actually stretch our marketing dollars to go further, and will actually be able to provide more students with books instead of just 1 or 2 books that their actual dollars would have been able to cover.
That is awesome there. Just the budgets, obviously during this time, and all the campuses I've talked to are shrinking, but to be able to use this as a way to still be able to possibly stretch your dollars more and positively impact potentially more students during this time is just an awesome thing to be able to think about. And then sounds like you're already on the way of, or on your way of implementing that. What, as far as billing for how this handles, because that was a key common denominator with these programs. Do you have any tips for managing that for anybody else?
You know, for us, it's really easy. RedShelf has a rockstar team when it comes to how we reconcile our billing at the end of the period. And so when we receive our billing from RedShelf, shout out to you, Megan, and your team, awesome job. It's actually broken out for us. And so the bowlers are actually identified on our billing separately than all of our inclusive access students. So it makes it quick and easy for us to reconcile our billing. It's very smooth and easy. And so just having that working relationship with RedShelf, it's made it easy for us to continue to move forward and grow.
That's awesome. I'm glad that Megan from billing is also on the call, so she can get her shout out as well. Awesome. So we'll move on. What advice do you have for stores going about, whether it's a team or an organization or anything that fits this characteristics? What advice would you have on ways they could communicate to other groups on campus?
So I think the first thing is identify your key partners. Find those that you have great working relationships with. This is not a system that you can put in place if you don't have effective communicators on both sides, not only from the bookstore side to the department or the organization, but you have to have some individuals within that group that are willing to communicate out to their constituents as well in order to make it effective. You've got to ensure that that group is willing to work with you to ensure that you get those schedules so you can vet all of those materials in a timely manner, that you're not trying to rush around during the middle of back to school rush to try and input 30 athletes and their student schedules and get all their information in there to get their shelves built in. The whole purpose behind this is that the students, just like your inclusive access programs, are able to have their materials on or before the first day of class, so that you're relieving those stress and you're taking away the anxieties and really taking the thinking out of it for them, but also helping their club and organization stretch their dollars or be able to apply those dollars in other areas. So that would be the biggest thing, is, you know, making sure that there's a foundation of communication between you and the departments. And then, you know, kind of, if you want to start small and then build as you go. Work with 1 or 2 programs and then continue to grow your programs. There's several other programs that we have here at Wichita State that I think would be perfect fits for that, for our program, similar to what we have with our bowling program. But my concern is just organization and ensuring that we're going to effectively execute it, making sure that when you go into it, that everyone's on the same page and that the execution of the program is going to be able to happen.
Yeah, and a few great takeaways there, but the communication, the importance of having relationships, like we've hit on earlier in the presentation, and just continuing on with those. Obviously, success, like you mentioned, for your inclusive access program, communication is key. But really, with anything new in general, but anything new on campus that involves multiple parties, communication is key. So it's great to hear that that's helped improve things and really helped get things started here at Wichita. Let's go into more of the details. I feel like we hit on how students get access to the content with this through an email. An automatic email is sent to them, but could we talk through why you thought this made sense for the program?
Sure. So unlike most of your inclusive access programs, the bowling program, all of these students are enrolled in a plethora of different courses across, the campus. And so that, not all of your athletes are going to be in the same class. So we had to try and figure out a way to where we can take individual students and then basically fit their course materials to them and their schedule. So basically the white label aspect was the best method in order to deliver it to the students. It made sense where we could build it on the back end side, create it for them, and just deliver the content.
Yeah, I think it's great point there that you already have an inclusive access program set up on campus that's benefiting the students, that they follow access one way, but when something new comes around, it's worth having a conversation to talk about that specific group and figure out what makes the most sense for them. Even though you may have something set up, maybe a group on an individual user basis like that, there's another opportunity that makes more sense for them. So we've hit on the way that they've accessed and kind of a lot of the benefits, but as anybody knows, with something new, there's a potential to have some kinks. So what were some of the issues that you maybe experienced, and how did you overcome them? I'll pass it to both of you, I think, on this one.
Holly, I'll let you share first.
I think at first it was just coming up with a timeline that worked for us. That first semester was not the easiest. It was kind of, hey, we're going to do this program and we're going to use it. And at some point you need to get schedules to Andi. And so I don't think I sent him to her until like maybe August 1, maybe even after that. And we start classes the second or third week in August. So it was pretty quick to make sure everything got vetted and stuff like that. And so now her and I set up just 2 dates that kind of work for us. So June 1st and December 1st. And then I just make my student athletes register before then. We put it in part of what they sign when they get their scholarship, that I agree in order to stay in the scholarship program, I'll be registered for classes by. And of course, like they still drop an ad, that still happens. But I think the last year that we kind of established those dates really made a big difference. And then Andi also shares the shared document with me. So, I mean, when I have questions, it's during rush and she's not at her desk to answer all my questions. And a lot of times I can answer them myself through that document because the RedShelf team's awesome and keeps that up to date too. And there's some color coding and a key at the bottom. So it's really easy for me to see this is adopted, this isn't adopted, we're looking into this. And then I can communicate that with the student athletes too.
Great. Andi, any other thoughts you wanted to add on that?
No, I think a lot, and like Holly hit the great points of, identifying our timelines that work best for all of us. And then just having that shared partnership with all of us, sharing the RedShelf spreadsheet with Holly as well. So if students add and drop classes during the midst of rush, when we're unable to make those changes and vet it, Holly has all of our contacts at RedShelf. She can go in and make an adjustment on the spreadsheet and those types of things, and then send a note out to the RedShelf team saying, hey guys, we've had a change in adoption for our bowler. Can you take a look at this? And generally we get a quick turn within 24 hours to know if yes, it's available, or no, you're gonna have to go get the physical content from the Shocker store. So I think overall it's just been a great partnership. Students understanding the process was our biggest speed bump to kind of get over, and or the communication of letting them know when you drop a class or add a class, you need to let us know so we can fix it for you.
So there's no way to just automatically know that.
My crystal ball is always in the shop.
Awesome. We have a few things there, like the transparency, just to have both everybody involved in this successful implementation of this, just all seeing what's going on all in the same place seems to be a benefit. And then you hit on communication again. So with any advice, communication is key for this. We touched on some of the benefits that came through briefly, but why don't we use this last slide to kind of summarize all the different parties involved and the most, I would say, impactful benefits for yourself. So Andi, starting at the bookstore, what would be the most impactful and the biggest benefits you think for yourself in the store?
I think for us, a lot of times with our student athletes, because they're on scholarship, if we ever run out, we have to do custom orders and things like that for these students. And a lot of times, you know, when you're in the midst of rush and they're delayed, the students are ultimately delayed in getting their materials. So I think the benefit for us is we're not having to make these second day air rush deliveries on a product that we may run out of. We don't have to carry the inventory. It's just a digital process. It saved us time on, you know, just the accounting, ensuring that our students have a great experience with their course materials and interactions with us. It saves us on our bottom line. It saves Holly time on her bottom line and those types of things. So, and it really helps increase our relationships with the students.
That's awesome. And a lot of those time savings, like you said, have an impact, positive impact on the bottom line, which in the current environment is ever more important. Anything you can find to make an improvement, no matter where it is definitely important now more than ever. So Holly, I know Andi mentioned the time already saved for yourself, but were there any other benefits for the club itself, or the meaning of what that time or money saved can do for you all?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest benefit to us is just the benefit to our bottom line. We, like Andi said, 3 years ago, we were going over budget on our course materials every semester. And we haven't had to increase the budget in the last few years. And we've been able to kind of redirect some of the dollars that we would use in course materials to either give them more in tuition scholarship, or add additional book scholarships to our program. So we haven't had to reduce the amount of things that we've been giving to them or anything like that. And that's the most important, is we're still able to give them as much as they were getting beforehand. And then, yeah, the time and the stress and the anxiety of the first few weeks of school is huge. You know, it's a rush for the university, not just in the Shocker store. And so the fact that they have their books on the first day of classes, that they're not having to stand in lines, that I'm not having to go pull books or go find something, it just eliminates a lot of those questions and a lot of the stress that the student athletes would feel too.
Yeah, and anytime you can alleviate stress, that's a huge benefit. But in order to keep, I think one of the most impactful things you said was the scholarships and maintaining those, because that's key to how you maintain and you win 20 national championships. Like I mentioned in the beginning, those are a really important way to keep student athletes that are excelling into your program. So as far as the students, we went through the benefits of the first day access and when they travel. So I'll just kind of do a quick summary on that. But I know from my experience, it would be just one less thing to think about, jumping from a meeting to a workout to a study table session, and not having to think about, do I need to go back to the dorms to get my book, or it's just having it all available online would be a huge stress reliever. Thinking back to a younger me thinking through this scenario. So that's the last tip that we have. Steve, did we want to open to Q&A?
Yeah, thanks, Cody. We've got just a little bit of time we'll put into Q&A because we're a bit over time. So thanks everybody who's still hung on with us here. And as I mentioned in chat, if you have to drop, that's all right. You could enter a question in chat right now and leave, and we will get to it here in the recording, and you'll get that link. So if you have a question, throw it in chat. If you care to raise your hand to ask something live, please go ahead. But in the short time after the main session here, I'll throw out the one question that we got during the registration process, which was possibly Andy can answer this more directly, around key strategies for faculty, getting them on board with digital, particularly when they might be resistant, either in mind or practice, with the transition to digital. Do you have any thoughts about that?
That's a great question. We do have, we've done this program before. Not only we've worked with our athletic program before on some instances where we've piloted it with our NCAA athletes as well. And we ran into some barriers where the instructors were anti-digital, where in certain instances like this, the instructors have to set up like a course key if they're using a courseware for those students to be able to access those materials. So we have a close working relationship with our LMS administrator, who actually goes in and creates those for us so those students can still use those materials and they can still be successful for their class in submitting the work to the instructor. So it's a benefit. And a lot of it is just our campus has a huge initiative for affordability, and a lot of our instructors are learning that the students coming into our campus are digital natives, and that they're having to change their way of thinking because the students in which they serve are wanting course materials that are digital.
Yeah, we've heard that in some other conversations we've had with campuses too, is there's simply a shift in the demand from students and their orientation and willingness to go digital and expectation in that area. So that really can shift things for faculty, perhaps even more so than organizational pushes for it. Great. The other question I had actually while I was listening is, has the situation with COVID, which you mentioned earlier, has that changed or accelerated your strategy on digital transformation, or how you prioritize what teams or clubs might be the best choice for this?
Absolutely. It's a huge factor for us. Actually, prior to this, I'd sent a private invite to several divisions at our institution saying, hey, I think this is a podcast that I think you need to jump on and listen, because I think it may impact your area moving forward. Similar to our bowling program, we also have a varsity rowing program. We have groups of individuals on our campus. Our institution does a huge initiative where a re-reg campaign, to where if students are late to register for courses, they incentivize them with book scholarships. And so we give out about 40 book scholarships to students who are late registries for the upcoming term. And so I think this is a way that our provost office could actually save dollars in providing course materials that way, and actually give more students books versus saying, here's a dollar amount. We can actually give them more books and help with the out-of-pocket expense to our students.
Great. I'm sure a lot of our attendees are dealing with that reprioritization and having to sort of pivot strategy in the face of what's going on right now and the uncertainty of how to deploy this. So thank you for that. And we are at just about 10 minutes over, so we do need to close our time here today. So I just want to send a great big thank you to Andi and Holly for planning this over a number of weeks and being involved in developing these top 5 tips. Cody, I appreciate you hosting for us today. And this is some contact information in case you have any additional questions or want to investigate more about RedShelf at about.redshelf.com. If you put a backslash after that URL and the word connections, you will see a list of links to our previous sessions. And also, you can register for upcoming sessions. So we welcome you to do that. You will receive an email at in the next day or so with a link to the recording of this session and also a satisfaction survey. And we'd love for you to fill that out for us. You'd also have an opportunity to suggest future topics. So thank you again for attending. Thank you to our guests from Wichita State University. Thank you to Cody for hosting, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks, everyone.